Dudettes. Welcome to the podcast you've been waiting for. Great perspective and exclusive interviews.
It's a hard job for those guys because it's happening fast.
The kind of Saints insight and fun commentary you won't get anywhere else.
We've got plenty of technology to speed things up.
It's time to kick off your Been There, Done That Saints podcast, where we hand it off to our host, Mike Nabors, and Super Bowl winning linebacker, Scott Shanle.
Proud of these guys.
Coach Payton, proud of the podcast effort so far. We're working very diligently to get Sean Payton on during training camp. Optimistic that we will get him on this podcast. Welcome to another edition of Been There, Done That, everybody. I am Mike Nabors. Past, present, past, present, past, present. We're going to have past Saints and present Saints. Of course, a week ago, right off the heels of his big contract, we had an exclusive over 30-minute interview with Cam Jordan. This time around, we're going to go past. We're going to go Jahri Evans, one of the hallmarks of the Sean Payton era in terms of offensive linemen. Let me welcome in Justin Thomas, our producer, and my partner, Scott Shanle. Shanle, we're going to get to Jahri in just a second, but I think when you look at your era with Sean Payton and Drew Brees, offensive linemen don't get a lot of accolades, but it just showed how good Jahri Evans is, how respected he was for so many years.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I think the one thing that is going to be really cool when it's all said and done with the Sean Payton era is there's going to be a lot of guys in the Ring of Honor, the Saints Hall of Fame. And like you said, what's cool about Jahri Evans is he's one of the guys that you think of right away. You think of one of those guys who was a cornerstone of what we needed in 2006 to get that offensive line going. And I've said it a lot of times, him and Larry Allen are two best guards I've seen. And fortunately, I played with both. And he was a special player. There's no doubt about it. He
gives us a lot of insight on why he went to tiny Bloomsburg College. He had better offers. I don't want to ruin the story, but he really talks about why that happened. His first training camp, John Stinchcomb was on our podcast earlier on and kind of said he had a bad technique. We give Jahri a chance to answer John Stinchcomb's ribbing a little bit. And we talk about a lot. I don't want to get too carried away, but Jahri Evans was good for a long time, Scott. Does he have any chance at Canton? That's probably an outside shot, but he put up some real good years there for a long time.
Well, he should. I think if the Saints were predominantly a running team, when you think of the Dallas Cowboys in the 90s, they had Emmitt Smith running for all those yards. So obviously the offensive line gets a lot of credit. But it's unfortunate that Jahri isn't mentioned like Larry Allen is mentioned when he played with the Cowboys, because he was an anchor. He was a perennial Pro Bowler. He was the all-Madden offensive line teams. But another guy who we talked about, Marcus Colston, being nicknamed the Quiet Storm. Marcus just went about his job, went about his business. Jahri was the same guy, exact same person, just went about his business, and he was kind of the quiet storm of the offensive linemen throughout his tenure in the NFL.
It's amazing. Those guys were part of that 2006 draft class. They had probably, felt like they had some pretty good hits on those guys, but no idea that they would hit with Jahri Evans and Marcus Colston in that fashion. Before we get to Jahri Evans, just what your first recollections of him. I remember when we had Colston on, Scott, we talked about, you weren't there when Colston had the rough mini camps and OTAs and all that. He really came and played well in that training camp. Jahri Evans, I know you're playing defense. You're just getting used to the playbook back in 2006, back in Millsaps and Jackson. But I guess it's kind of different. You notice a wide receiver more, but can you notice a Jahri Evans even in that first training camp back then?
I was swimming at the time when I got traded. I show up to Jackson. It was 150 degrees. I was just trying to survive. But I'll never forget Joe Vick coming in the linebacker meeting and saying, guys, I think we found something in this Jahri Evans kid. I think he's going to be an outstanding player in the league. He showed us a couple plays from the practice that we normally probably wouldn't notice of what he was doing to the defensive linemen. And that was the first time I remember thinking I need to keep an eye out for this kid. And Jahri was just one of those guys who never felt like he was a rookie. He always felt like he was a veteran. It was never too big for him. I know Stinchcomb will rib him a little bit and give him a little bit of flack about technique and other things, but Jahri was just so strong and had so many different intangibles that you can't coach that go unnoticed with the offensive line position. And I think just maturity was one of his biggest strengths early on.
All right, without further ado, we bring in our guest that we've hyped up, born in the city of brotherly love, the pride of the Bloomsburg Huskies, the 2006 fourth-round pick by the New Orleans Saints in that esteemed draft class. a 6-time Pro Bowler, a 4-time first-team All-Pro. Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome in Mr. Jahri Evans.
What's up, fellas? How you doing?
Welcome to our podcast, Jahri. We really wanted to have you on. You're such a big part of the Sean Payton era. You know, a question I like to ask, you know, a lot of your former teammates, and I want to ask you, you know, is it amazing that the Sean Payton era is still going on? Because you know in the NFL it's not for long, and this is pretty special.
You're right. Like, it's not for long, but at the same token, it's not amazing either because, you know, Scott remembers early on in 2006, we were a half away from going to the Super Bowl in that Chicago game. So I think early on, Coach Payton's success and what he implemented in that franchise, you know, was saw early on with that first 2006 season. So it's not surprising. And also, I mean, come on, we got Drew Brees. So, you know what I mean? He's doing his thing, you know?
You know, we're going to look back at your career, but you came out of Bloomsburg, and you were the first player drafted out of Bloomsburg in 14 years at the time in 2006. How in the world did big-time colleges miss on Jahri Evans, and how did NFL guys miss on Jahri Evans? Were you a late bloomer? Were you surprised that it lasted that long? Or, you know, how would you characterize yourself coming out of college?
Well, what happened was I didn't play my senior year of high school football. I had broke my knee. I had a dislocated fracture of my tibia right below my patella playing basketball at the Y in Philadelphia. So I didn't play my senior year of high school football. And leading up to my senior year, I mean, I had 3 size 14 shoe boxes full of letters from D1, Virginia, you know, a whole bunch of schools, Maryland and stuff like that. But me not playing my senior year, they kind of backed out. And then Bloomsburg was just coming off a national championship berth. Their running back, Marcus Glaze, was getting looked at. He was in the Rams training camp. So, you know, I just went up there on scholarship. And then coming out in 2006, one of the scouts, his dad was my OC at Bloomsburg, Jim Monis, and he was coming off of the Eagles. And throughout my whole college career, he would come up and he would just say, "Hey man, you passed the eye test. We'll be back in 4 years." And then in that year, in 2006, he left the Eagles and went to the Saints, and that's how Coach Payton and Mickey Loomis found out about me, through the scout Jim Monis.
Well, Jahri, I think one of the things that impressed me about you early on is you never played like a rookie. I mean, you played like a veteran from the time you showed up. I mean, obviously you would know better than me, but I played with Larry Allen in Dallas, and I went to the Saints and saw you play. And I tell people all the time, you guys are the 2 best guards that I've ever seen or went against and played against. What made?
Thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's 100% truth. And Larry Allen was a beast. I saw. You know, Coach Payton would show those day after plays up on the screen, and he'd have you and Carl Nix. And what people don't appreciate about the position you guys played is they see where the ball goes every play, but they're not always watching what goes on in the trenches. And I think if people watch that, they would appreciate what you guys do, play in and play out. But at what point as a rookie, or maybe it wasn't even as a rookie, maybe year 1 or 2, when did you realize you not only could play in the NFL coming from a small school, but you could be an elite guard in the NFL?
Well, coming out, I didn't play in the Division II All-Star game, the Cactus Bowl, because I was invited to a Division I All-Star game. It was the Las Vegas Bowl at the time, which they don't have anymore. And there was a couple guys who played in that game who were going to, not the East-West Shrine game, but the one below that. So I played against some D1 talent in that Cactus Bowl All-Star game. And then, you know, guys from Michigan, guys from Virginia Tech, and Miami, and the Florida States. And it kind of just being able to see, you know, having success that weekend with those guys kind of boosted my thought process of like, hey, man, I'm coming out just like these guys and I can do this. And then in training camp, Scott, as you know, our training camp was brutal.
Yeah.
So going through that training camp and we had some big guys up front and everybody was fighting for a job. I don't care where you were drafted, what position you were drafted, everybody was fighting to get on the field. So everybody was basically in survivor's mode. and not against, just Coach Payton, but against the Heat too. So, those experiences really, got me in the mindset that, hey man, I can do this. And then when a couple guys went down in training camp, I just went back to my memory in high school. I remember as a junior, as a sophomore in 10th grade, we lost the Penn Charter, and this is where Matt Ryan went to school. I'm not sure if he was a QB at the time, but we lost 20-0, and Coach came in and he shook up the lineup, and he put me in the starting lineup, and I kind of didn't succeed, whether it was just my mindset, me being a little timid, a sophomore, being put in front of a senior. So I kind of took that experience in with me in training camp. And when Mayberry went down and then Chad Sutterson went down, I just stepped in and I always told myself, take advantage of this opportunity, and I did.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about. I think the cool thing about this podcast, Jahri, is it's a revolving theme from a lot of guys who we played with. Great locker room, and a lot of guys with chip on their shoulder, looking to prove something. And I think that's what really established us in 06 is you remember Coach Vitt used to call us the Mutts. Nobody wanted. If you weren't the number one overall pick or you weren't a big time contract guy, and we were made up of a team of that. So it was a great fit for a lot of guys. Looking back at your career, if you could name who was the hardest defensive lineman to block, what was the one guy that you knew you were going to be in for all day on Sunday when you played him?
I get this a lot. And Scott, man, these D tackles are different, especially now with the Aaron Donalds of the world, the smaller guys, but quick and fast and play on the edge. But I remember rookie year, I played against Hall of Famer Brian Young and San Fran, who were super strong. And then also I played against one of the big nose guards and what's the name in Cleveland? What was his name? Oh man, I can't think. Was it Adams? Is it Sam Adams? On the blank.
Sam Adams, yeah.
Yeah, and I could not move him on a power play. It was ridiculous. He was so heavy. And I remember Fang was going back, I was going back, and I was like, I just hit him and just
didn't move him.
Just slid down his body, man. But over the years, Gerald McCoy is definitely one of the best D tackles, overall D tackles, run game and pass game. That is has always given me problems. Seeing him twice a year, he's a great player. And then Haloli Nada too, man. He was a big time D tackle also.
Well, hey, just quick follow up with that. You're not going to make Saints fans feel very good now that Gerald McCoy went from the Buccaneers to the Panthers.
I know.
Still got to face him.
I was like, man, he just doesn't want to lead the division. I don't blame him, man. Familiarity is key too. You know what I'm saying?
Hey, Jahri, one of the things we've had fun with in this podcast is we're kind of building a library. We've talked to so many of your former teammates, and every week it seems like when we bring on a guest, we have a story that a former teammate has brought up.
Yeah.
And, my first year covering the Saints was back in 06, your first year, Sean Payton's first year, a lot of people's first year. And I asked your old teammate, John Stinchcomb, who we know isn't always serious all the time, how did that offensive line come together back in 06 so quickly? And here were his thoughts.
They lost sleep over that offensive line. They let Wayne Gandy go. They moved over Jamal Brown. You still got Fane, but then you've got some low round draft pick from Bloomsburg that might start, and his technique is terrible.
I got to get a rebuttal here.
His technique is terrible. It was, Coach Marone always got on me on my technique. It was terrible, but hey, man, I got the job done. So,
what?
He always harped on me that, listen, if you don't fix your technique, you won't play long. So I did get that fixed pretty quickly.
Well, obviously it was a quick turnaround. Shanle, was just raving about you at practice, how you from the get-go were very consistent and very strong. I mean, coming from Bloomsburg, going to the NFL, being a fourth-round pick, you mentioned Coach Doug Marone, who's the head coach in Jacksonville now, who was your offensive line coach. I remember Zach Streif telling us there was a point at Millsaps where he thought his football career was over until an assistant coach told him he was doing okay. I mean, was there a turning point at Millsaps, maybe a good practice, maybe a good preseason game where you thought, you know what, maybe I'll be okay here?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was, man, what really kept I would say the guys going to Millsaps. And over the years, of those 3 years, it kind of got better. They start implementing some things like a cool tent, because they realized it was so hot. But, the biggest thing was just knowing that the guy next to you was going through the same stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was just like, man, for me, it was just, I just love to play the game so much. I always wanted to do it as a kid. It was, listen, he told me to run through this brick wall. I'm going to try to do it. So, but yeah, man, from sleeping in the meetings room, so we didn't have to take that 10-minute walk that was incorporated in our rest time, which shouldn't have been. Coach talked with them, you got an hour and a half. Well, this 10-minute walk is it's not really an hour and a half if you incorporate that. But but yeah, it just, I think mainly just seeing the rest of the guys going through it together, really kind of pushed us and in the right direction. And people forget, man, we spent 6 weeks there. I mean, normally it's 3.5 weeks of training camp, but we were there for 6 weeks. So yeah, just those moments like that. But yeah, Zach always tells that story. It's funny, man. Guys were cramping like crazy out there. I remember one time we were down so many linemen, and me and Zach were taking first team reps, and some a second, some a third. It was just ridiculous.
You talk about, how tough training camp was, and I always wonder this. I mean, does a tough training camp help a team? I thought the bigger picture with this football team is Sean Payton did a good job bringing in the right guys, maybe letting some of the guys who didn't gel well with his game plan out. I thought bigger than how tough the training camp was the culture that he kind of built, and it kind of sustained for so long. Does the culture kind of supersede how hard training camp was?
I think the difference is, just like Scott said earlier, it was just new for everybody. Like, everybody was just new, from the coaching staff to the players. It was just a lot of turnover. Like Stink said, it was a lot of turnover that year. So I believe their motto was like, listen, we're just going to see who survives this. And because they will survive this, they will be stronger as a unit, as a group, as a team. And that's what we rallied behind. As the years progress and people get familiar with the playbook, get familiar with their teammates, get familiar with the coaches, sometimes you can back off of that toughness or that environment that creates that, that hot environment. So I think it just depends on the time, when everybody's coming together and what the mindset is. But, I'm not one of those guys that's like, oh, you got to be puking in the gym to get a good workout. You know what I'm saying? like, no, I'm not one of those guys. But at that time, I think it worked best for us.
Jahri, you obviously, you're going to go down as one of the greatest New Orleans Saints ever to play, but you had a couple other stops at the end of your career. And I think Saints fans enjoy hearing what separates the New Orleans Saints organization from other organizations. What were your stops like? Your time in Seattle and Green Bay, just the differences in organizations, and then maybe talk about the differences in the quarterbacks that you were able to play with. You played with two other really great quarterbacks during your time in Seattle and Green Bay as well.
Yeah, all three locations were very different, just where they are. But Seattle was fun. It was a great environment. It was very relaxing and chill. I mean, those guys practice on the damn water, for goodness sake. You see boats flying past. And it's
long ways from Airline Drive and the heat training camp.
You see boats flying past. I mean, you got the new Boeing flying over the sky that have just been built that are green. It was just, a little bit different in that aspect. But, they had a pretty good team. They were a defensive-minded team. Obviously Russell was there. He's a good quarterback, good person, very engaged. And then Pete Carroll, different type of coach, very energetic, a basketball court in the meeting room to start the meetings. Guys are taking, they had, like, during training camp, they had like a free throw shot bracket where, guys are competing for free throws before meetings. So, just the environment was a little different. It was more, I guess, like, not collegey, but you know what I'm saying? But kind of just a little bit less serious than I was used to in New Orleans, which was fine. But it was fun there. I mean, just seeing how they're interacting, meeting those guys there. They had a lot of players on the staff that I played against. The middle linebacker, I can't remember his name. He was a good player, and a few other guys. And then Green Bay, it was just, that was cold, very cold. I remember waking up one day, it was like -8 degrees, wind chill feel like -32. I'm like, goodness gracious. I'm like, I hope we're not outside today. But that staff was cool, and I can relate to that staff because a lot of them are from Pennsylvania, the Pittsburgh area. Mike McCarthy's staff there. Actually, the president of the university was at Colgate with my head coach in college. He was the AD, and my head coach was the coach. So there was a lot of synergy there. But it was different, just their structure, their weekly structure was different. And something that they had a basketball court in their facility. So, Aaron and O-line, we would play horse before our individual meetings. So that was different too. But from the quarterback perspective, man, I think all these guys have that championship mindset. I think all those guys are great in their individual way. I think there's things that one guy can do that the other two can, and vice versa. They're just all great in their individual way. I know we try to put this greatness in the bottom and say you got to have these skill sets to be great, but just being around those three guys, man, you can really see how they're all great in different ways. And it was fun. Obviously I didn't plan on leaving New Orleans, but Scott, we know how the business can be.
Oh yeah.
So, but that short time in Seattle and then Green Bay, I enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, the reason I ask that is because, I retired. We live in Dallas now. Obviously, I was here with the Cowboys before joining the Saints. But people in Dallas are confused or they're astonished at how loyal I am to the Saints, and a lot of it is because of the culture we had, the locker room, the guys. It was
right.
We caught lightning in a bottle, and it's rare because my time in Dallas was not like that at all. And we had good team, we had good players. Coach Parcells was the head coach, but we didn't have that family environment where everybody cared about one another. We didn't have egos. We were all about winning, and I think that's what made New Orleans special. And that's the only reason I asked you those questions about the other places you've been, because me being other places made me realize that New Orleans was even more special, and it's not like that throughout the NFL.
No, you're absolutely right. As far as, a locker room perspective, you're absolutely right. New Orleans was definitely, felt like a huge family, and it was very different. Now, I didn't spend that much time in Seattle, but we know the players that they have over there and how strong-minded they were, especially on the defensive side of things. And with the young QB. But in Green Bay, it felt like a family locker room also. That's an organization that doesn't really go after a lot of free agents. They build through the draft, and, they don't have an owner. They have, the president that runs it. So, that they felt tight-knit also there.
Hey, Jahri, when you retire, we talked to players about this, from Streep to Stinchcomb, Pierre Thomas, Lance Moore, Colston, a lot of guys. It takes sometimes a while to figure out what to do after football. Some guys kind of have a plan, but some guys it takes a while. How was the, going into retirement for you? Did you kind of know what you wanted to do? Has it been a process? How has the transition been for you?
Well, I thought I'd play football forever. Like I know we all do. So, I started taking advantage of a lot of the NFL programs, from the restaurant boot camp to the NBA program, getting my MBA at the University of Miami. So, I kind of just did that, and I've been doing real estate since 2007. So I had some things in place that I knew that I would like to get more involved in, post-career. So, right now I'm just navigating those things. And then, right soon before I retired, I got involved with the AFL. Marcus Colston, he had the Harrisburg team, and then he let that team go and got into the Philadelphia Soul. So when the opportunity for me to get involved in, professional football team in the AFL and being my hometown team, I kind of got involved in that. So just been doing those things since I'm not banging heads anymore. And I have a 15-month-old son, so I'm in a new league now, so.
Well, sounds like you were more than prepared.
Those things have been keeping me busy.
Exactly. That's great stuff. I know you've been doing real estate that long. It sounds like you were more than prepared. But are you prepared for our final segment? Justin, our producer, you know what time it is. Jari, I talked to Zach Strief and Stinchcomb about how offensive linemen, no offense, Shanle, are the best interviews, and your former teammates in the trenches handled more likely very, very well. More likely, it's 3 hypotheticals about your career, about football. And the first one, you mentioned number 9, Drew Brees, when I opened up the interview talking about the Sean Payton tenure. I don't know if you can do this off the top of your head, but more likely, do you have a favorite Drew Brees story? Maybe it could be in the huddle. It could be in the locker room. Heck, it could be anywhere. You have a favorite Drew Brees story that stands out for Jahri Evans?
Let me see. In 2006, we kind of got out a little bit, and we were celebrating going to the playoffs. We had that bye week, so we went clubbing for a little bit with him and his brother, who they looked, pretty similar. And I'm not going to say everything that went on in the club, but it was a great time. And Drew bought a whole bunch of champagne and a cooler in the club and stuff like that. And we had a good time. And the champagne was being spilled on people, and some people were upset on players, teammates. Some of the teammates didn't like that much, but we had a good time.
You could give us more details. This is a podcast if you want. Feel free.
well, Zach probably didn't tell you this, but Zach put all this champagne on Roman, and Roman was pretty upset that he just messed up his outfit for the night. But when you got your star quarterback out getting loose, you know that you got a good team, and which we had, and we knew that it was last success to come, and it was fun.
Before we get
after that, Drew didn't do too much clubbing after that. It got pretty serious as the years went on.
He peaked in 2006, and then he kind of picked it up in the Super Bowl parade, I guess, huh? Is that what happened?
I'm sorry?
He peaked in 2006, and then he kind of had his sequel for the Super Bowl parade, because I know he had fun at that one.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, more likely number 2. We've kind of had fun with this question. If Jahri Evans is stranded on a desert island, and you can only pick one former offensive lineman as the guy who's going to be stranded with you. Now Shanle brought up a good point. He could be a funny guy, or he could save your life. You could kind of go down 2 pathways here. Which former offensive lineman would Jahri Evans want to be stranded with on a deserted island?
Oh man, that's a good one. I'm gonna have to go with the guy that could save my life, and John Stinchcomb, since he's a med graduate. So I'm gonna have to go with John on that one.
Stinch is just he's gonna be all over you about your technique when it comes to starting fires and cutting trees.
Right. try to acquire food and fish and stuff. Yeah. But at least I know he can save my life, man. At least I know he can save my life.
That's the kind of guy Jahri is, though. Stinchcomb kind of throws him under the bus in his podcast, and then Jahri compliments Stinchcomb. So we'll remind him.
Yeah. Stinch my guy. Sit next to that guy for freaking 10 years in the meeting room. He's my guy.
That's unusual. All right, more likely number 3. You're 2/3 of the way home, Jahri. You wore 73 in your Saints career. If Jahri Evans could have 73 of anything, what would it be?
73 Mai Tais.
Wow.
Take it back to Hawaii, man. 73 Mai Tais. By the way, the Pro Bowl needs to go back to Hawaii. Let's just throw that out there.
I live in Florida, and Orlando is not a good place to be. If I'm a player, I want to definitely go to Hawaii, no doubt about it.
Exactly.
Well, listen, that was easy. Sometimes we throw out the number question. We have to almost play the Jeopardy theme. It takes a little while. That was like rapid fire. That was impressive.
Yeah, man. No doubt. They call me when I do some TV stuff and some recordings. I've earned the name of One Take Evans over the years, which is pretty cool.
Well, listen, I know you're busy. You got a lot going on. Congratulations on your young son, and you were a heck of a player. And we want to get all the great stories, and you definitely provided that and more. Definitely an inspiration to a lot of guys who have setbacks in their careers. You bounce back to have a great NFL career. All the best, Jahri. Hope to have you back down the road, but we really appreciate your time.
No, thanks, guys. Yeah, man. I would love to come back on during the season. Just hit me up.
Thanks, Jahri. Take care.
Jahri, rapid fire with the more likely Shanle. I learned a lot about him in that one, including his. I didn't know his senior year he was hurt, and that's why he went to Bloomsburg. But you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast how he and Marcus Colston were quiet during their careers. But some guys are quiet and not good interviews. But I think this can be said for Jahri Evans and Marcus Colston. They're quiet, but they're good interviews, both of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of it just goes back to they're kind of old souls a little bit. They're wise. They're very mature. And just because they don't talk a lot doesn't mean they don't have anything to say. Is they're usually collecting information and gathering information. And two guys who would have, throughout their NFL careers, fit in any locker room and made it better, both on and off the field. And we were lucky to have them a part of our Saints locker room as long as we were.
All right, we're not quite done yet. It's time for a little bit extra. Justin, little lanyard time. All right, Justin, as always, you lead off, my friend. What little extra do you have for us this week?
I have two quick things, and they both go hand in hand. Mike, I know you're a huge fan of The Office. I think, Shanle, you are too, right? Don't you watch The Office, or did?
Yeah, I've seen some episodes. I'm in the process of getting all my seasons lined up because I've seen them sporadically.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
That's all. Yeah, I'm jealous because I wish I could see him again and hadn't
For the
remembered
first
anything.
time.
Yeah. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I saw recently that essentially NBC is going to pay Netflix $500 million to take The Office off of Netflix so they can put it on their own streaming service, which that alone is mind-boggling that a show is worth $500 million. But it also leads me to mention that I'm really starting to get overwhelmed with all the different streaming sites that we're soon going to have. I mean, we already have Netflix. We've talked about that a lot, HBO, Amazon. But now you're going to have Disney's streaming service. CBS already has one. NBC apparently is trying to do one. Pretty soon it's going to be like cable was for years, where you had to pay for tons of extra channels and your bill is like over $150. It's getting ridiculous. So that's my rant for the week.
I think cable's on life support, and I'm frankly surprised that NBC didn't do that sooner. To me, that's such a prized commodity for them. But I'm like Shanle. I love The Office, but I didn't really see the end until it was on Netflix. So good stuff, Justin. Mr. Shanle, what do you have for us, lanyap wise?
I went and saw Toy Story 4 with the kids, and I was a little apprehensive because it's been a long time since we've seen Toy Story 3. Obviously, my kids were a lot younger then, but I knew it was time to go, and we were able to go when my freshman was going to hate this, but he was actually looking forward to going to it because I think it brought back a lot of memories from him when he was little, and he wanted to finish this thing out. His reviews were not very glowing. He didn't really like Toy Story 4 compared to the other ones, probably because he's a little older now, but it was fun. I think they did a good job. They waited a long time to bring Toy Story 4 out. But anybody who's saw the other three, I think you definitely have to go see Toy Story 4.
Well, tell your freshmen not to worry because, to my surprise, the last time I took my daughter, it's been a 9-year gap, I think, between the movies.
Wow.
She was 8 years old. She was 8 years old. Okay. Surprisingly, we went 2 days ago, and she's now 17. And I remember the last one. Old man got a little, it got a little emotional when the kid was going off to college.
Yeah.
I remember her looking at me. She's like, "Are you thinking about me?" And that obviously didn't help things when she says that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
and then so we made it a point to always go to this. And I said, well, the next time, I hope it'll maybe be in your mid-20s that you'll still go. And we kind of made that pact. But I kind of agree with your son. I thought this was a very good one. But I thought the 3 was the best one. I thought when the kid left for college, the toys are just trying to survive, basically. I thought that was a good one.
I would agree with that, yeah. I'm glad they brought another one out because I think at the time Toy Story 3 was supposed to be the finale, but it's one of those shows, movies that I think they could continue to make every 5 to 6 years and people would go to it just because there's a lot of memories there.
Yeah, it's not recreating Magnum PI on cable. It's actually a thought process that goes into it. Well, my lanyap, I'm going to kind of bring this to the Saints and television. How about that, guys? during minicamp, I took Sean Payton aside because he is, of course, from Naperville, Illinois. And the guy who dominated Jeopardy, James Holzhauer, is from Naperville. And I took Payton aside and I said, hey, do you know the guy from Jeopardy? He's like, no, but isn't that a great story? Because I didn't really know him at all. And I said, well, I didn't want to ask you that during the press conference. And we kind of laughed about it. But I want to talk about Jeopardy because, so much has changed since 1984. But Jeopardy hasn't. It's amazing to me that Jeopardy is still thriving. Here we are, almost 2020, when frankly Jeopardy was on it from 1964 to 1975, and in 78 and 79. But really, this run with Alex Trebek has been since 1984. And then you got Wheel of Fortune, kind of their next door neighbor. You got Pat Sajak, who's Dick Clark, basically of our generation, and Vanna White, who hasn't aged at all. I'm just amazed that with all the changes in television, I mean, Justin, we never rehearsed this, so it's amazing that Shanle brought up Toy Story. It's amazing you brought up Netflix and all these, all these outlets that are propping up here. I just think it's amazing that Jeopardy is still thriving, but even more amazing is this guy Holzhauer, who was a C student in college. Basically, when they asked him, how do you become so versatile in all these subjects? I don't know if you guys heard this, but he said his answer was he goes to the public library and just reads children's books on history and music. But I think that takes a special kind of brain to do that because his recall is unbelievable. But he said he would go to the library, and he tried to get on the show for years, but he did it by reading children's books. So I guess the lesson here is that Sean Payton didn't know his hometown Jeopardy guide. And the second one is, if you want to get really good at Jeopardy, just go to your local public library and check out some children's books. You don't have to be this, PhD at MIT or anything.
That's shocking. I mean, I need to find out what's going on in these children's books that allows someone to be this smart. I need to start reading more.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you go Beethoven and you get the fundamentals down because a lot of those Final Jeopardies are Beethoven. But, I think one thing Sean Payton could appreciate about his Naperville homie, I guess, is Holzhauer is a risk taker like Sean Payton. Would go for the daily doubles, would bet twice, 3 times the amount in Final Jeopardy. So I had my whole package ready, guys, for CST, and then Sean Payton had never heard of the guy. So when we get Payton on, maybe we'll bring it full circle. Yeah. All right, well, that's Lanyap, guys. Great stuff as always. That's why we don't rehearse it. It always comes out better. We're going to have current players. We're going to have former players coming up the next few weeks. We got a big guest for you next week. Remember, you can catch us on iTunes, Podbean, Spotify, Google, and Stitcher. This has been another edition of your Been There, Done That podcast. For our producer, Justin Thomas, for my partner, Scott Shanle, I'm Mike Nabors. We'll talk to you next week.